Just saw a glimpse of there making its way into San Donato. It's been a while since we've seen the Renault in action. It's been a while since the Ultimate Cup Series has been to Mugello as well. So we are returning to some old favourites this weekend in Trofeo GTS. The Renault being run by Race Activity and being driven by Charles-Henri Semani in this session. And sharing the car with Emmanuel Collard, which is obviously a very familiar name as a multiple Le Mans Series champion, LMGTE champion, of course, as well. Lots of success with the Pescarolo team, but he'll be out in Q2. As we see the SR&R team, their various Ferraris. They have the Ferrari 488 Challenge machinery, in the most part in the UCS3 category, but also the Ferrari 488 GT3 car with Francesco Azzori returning to the series. And in fact, the Italian is taking part in this session. Of course, home race for the SR&R team. Slightly different colour scheme on their cars. We're used to seeing them in all white, but a bit of extra black trim on their 488 Challenge cars that, as I mentioned, are going to be in the UCS3 category. And as we look back to the last time that we saw Trofeo GTS out, which was in Portimao, it was Lyle Schofield and Frédéric Lacour sharing the victories there. Lyle Schofield in this session in the 353 car, which is that one just making its way through the picture ahead of the sister car, just making their way through the Buccini corner, the last turn on this circuit. As we build up to the first flying laps now, and see the racing spirit of Le Mans Ferrari 488 Challenge as well of Frédéric Lacour. Some other machinery as well. We have the Porsche Cup cars out here as well. We do have a mix of GT3 machinery, as we mentioned. Just saw a glimpse there of Francesco Azzori, who is leading the Ultimate GT Sprint Cup standings. Has won every single race that he's entered so far this year between the Trofeo GTS and the Ultimate GT Sprint Cup, which we saw in Hockenheim, but Francesco was not there. But let's have a look at that Renault RS01 car, the number 83 machine, just running a little bit wide, going down what looked like Casanova and Cervelli. This RS01 machine, it is Charles-Henri's car. He's owned it for 8 years and has been very useful as a sort of training car with Emmanuel Collard, because they're able to put a passenger seat in it. So Emmanuel can sit there in the passenger seat and guide Charles-Henri through the lap and give him a bit of extra coaching. The pair apparently preparing for a European Le Mans Series outing later in the month in the GT category. Obviously not with the Renault, but as I mentioned, a good training car as Charles-Henri comes across the timing line. This should be the first lap time across the board. So 1:52.222. That car has set the pace so far in both of the free practice sessions, in both wet and drier conditions. So it was a 1:53.988 in the wetter session yesterday. It was a lot of on and off rain throughout yesterday. So very hard to actually get a read on what the order looks like. In the drier session, we were looking at the 1:48.0s for this car, which is powered by the 3.8 litre twin turbo V6. And we have a red flag already, not even 5 minutes into the session. And I wonder what could have brought that out. We do have marshals on track. They're being guided. I think that must be a shortcut back into the paddock. We have kart 77 stopped at turn 9 the timing screen is telling me, which is the BDR competition Lamborghini Super Trofeo car of Alfredo Hernandez, the Mexican racer, and turn 9. That is Arabiata 2. So the cars will slowly make their way back into pit lane. Before the red flag came out, as we see the recovery vehicles already on their way to the scene, Francesco Azzori did manage to usurp Charles Henri Samani's lap time in the Ferrari 488 GT3 car. It was a 150.045 that the Italian managed to put in. We also managed to see times from Lyle Schofield, who currently sits third fastest in UCS3 pole, and just ahead of his teammate in the 333 car, Francesco Coissan. We also saw Jeremy Avalanda on Porsche Cup pole in 122. That was a very late entry. But has beaten Lionel Rigaud so far for the GP racing team. So we see cars back into pit lane now. And Alfredo Hernandez did put in a first sector time before bringing out that red flag, but we're yet to see times from likes of Pierre Aru and Carl van der Westen. And Hugh van der Westen, who is also racing the 991 specification Porsche. And he and his sons, Carl and Caesar, will be driving the 992 in the Trofeo GTE race on Sunday as well. So it is a total of 15 cars that we have with us this weekend in Trofeo GTS. As I mentioned, last time we saw them out was in Portimao. The overall victories going to Francesco Azzori in the 2 races he took part in, but also to Alfredo Hernandez and Alexis Berthe, which is the CMR Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And CMR still represented on the grid this weekend as well, with Patrick Michelier in the 488 Challenge. But also we see them once again with the Ginetta GTX car of Eric Mouet, which is the development car sort of between GT3 and GT4 specification from Ginetta. And that team also very busy competing in GTE with the GT4 Ginetta, and then also with the LMP3 Ginetta machinery as well, the G61 in the European Endurance Prototype Cup on Sunday. Stellar grid lined up for that. 36 different prototypes between the Nova MPO2s and the LMP3 machinery. A mix of the Ligiers, Duqueines and Ginettas, and here in Trofeo GTS it's a wonderful mix of Porsches, Ferraris, Ginettas, Lamborghinis. We have the a Corvette GT3 car as well, Olivier Morahan, back out with the JRM racing team, of course, and the Audi R8 GT4 as well from Herrera Racing. That's Pierre Aru in his very familiar Wile E. Coyote livery, which will be very easy to spot the Frenchman. So there is Alfredo out of the car and being picked up by the medical car. So we haven't seen what prompted Alfredo to stop out on track and indeed bring out this red flag. But nonetheless, good to see him out of the car as we take a look at Francesco Azzori in the SR&R number 3 Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. Car he's sharing once again with Aramis, as he did in Portimao. As we see the medical car just pulling off to the side of the road, and hopefully that means we will have green flag running very shortly. And we did have 10 minutes and 6 seconds left on the clock when the red flag came out. As we can take a look at the beautiful scenery that we have here at Mugello. As I say, it's been a wonderful day. Quite warm out there, especially in the direct sunlight. Expecting very different conditions throughout the weekend, though. Saturday is a bit of a question mark, but everyone can agree that on Sunday it's going to absolutely hoon it down, if you want the technical description of the weather forecast. I'm no meteorologist. And that won't be too much bother for most of these entries, but for those taking part in the Trofeo GTE race on Sunday, that definitely will be cause for concern, as we have green flag running once again in this Q1 session for Trofeo GTS here in Mugello, and Francesco Azzori is the first car that makes his way back out onto the racetrack and into San Donato. Closely followed eventually by Charles-Henri Simani. Most recently was competing with the Racetivity team in the Asian Le Mans series earlier this year, but has had several outings with the team in the 24-hour series and in Le Mans Cup. The 41-year-old Frenchman. Racetivity, another very busy team this weekend, so we're also running the Eric Debard 992 Cup car in this race. But also the L'Espace Bienvenue BMW GT4 car in Trofeo GTE this weekend. See a pair of the 488 Challenge cars just squabbling for position. That's Lyle Schofield, the Irishman, who has taken outright victories in the GT Sprint Cup in Hockenheim. And that number 73 machine that he just passed is the Patrick Michelier CMR run car, which is a different colour scheme on it than what we've seen in the past. Yeah, it's been a bit more black and yellow on that car than in the past. But all red for the Italian meeting. Chelier there making his way around the final corner, building up to what will be his first flying lap. Actually, no, he did actually get a time in before we went to the red flag, but not a particularly representative one. So hopefully we'll get some consistent running now. Because if you haven't seen the GTS running in the Ultimate Cup up until this point, the drivers do have the option to share the car with someone. So of the 4 races, you'll split the 2 qualifying sessions and 2 races apiece for the weekend. But of course, if you're running solo, as several of the drivers are, you'll only score points towards a championship in 2 of those races. So just saw Francesco Azzori there, who's gone purple in the first sector. He just made his way into Casanova. There is Azzori now into the closing stages of the lap through Correnteao and heading up towards Bondietti. Should be flat out in one of these cars. Of course, got to be very wary of those sausage curbs that lie in wait. I've already heard stories of splitters and other various bits of bodywork being damaged over those sausage curbs throughout the private testing that took place here a week ago, and also in the running we've had so far this weekend. But a 150.045 was Azzori's previous benchmark. He's gone fastest in all 3 sectors and lowers the benchmark to a 148.372, does the Italian in the Italian run Italian car. Just gonna listen to the V8 in that 488 car. Of course, now it's a twin turbo V6 in the 296, the contemporary Ferrari GT3 machinery. So it is always nice to listen to some of the older machinery out there before every manufacturer decides to switch to smaller turbocharged engines, as we hear Mercedes are on the verge of doing the same with the AMG Coupe, which is touted to replace the current machine in a couple of years' time, as that continues to lower the benchmark, still in the first sector, but also Charles-Henri Simani lowering his benchmark as well, 150.056, and 1.6 seconds back from Azzurri in terms of the lap time so far in the RS01. As we see Lyle Schofield, currently third fastest, making his way through Arrabbiata 1 and 2. Fearlessly fast, complex, and one of the many corners that makes Mugello such a joy to, well, certainly watch cars on. I'm sure the drivers absolutely loving every second behind the wheel on a day like this as well. That might feel differently when the rain comes on Sunday. But Schofield making his way through that Corantal corner. Has had 4 class wins in the, well, between GT Sprint and Trofeo GTS so far this weekend, as Lars Schofield, including that overall win at Hockenheim. But one of the drivers sharing a car this weekend, Francesco Corazon, will be in for the second session as we take a look at the Porsche Cayman GT4 car there. That was Andrei Safiritos, but now Charles-Henri Simani, now 2 seconds back from Azzurri, as he's gone even faster with 148.013. So we are now on the pace that this car was setting in FP2 yesterday. Of course, this car originally built to create a one-make series, the Renault Sport Trophy, replacing the Megane, but later homologated to GT3 specification in 2015 with a detuned engine and a bit more weight, which is the specification we're going to be seeing here this weekend. 70 kilos of ballast aboard that car, a bit less grunt as well, and steel brakes rather than the carbon ones that were originally on the car. If we were to take a look at the raw performance, it's somewhere between GT3 and old Class 1 DTM machinery. But we have seen this car achieve some success. Its first major win came here at Mugello in the 24-hour series in 2016 with the V8 Racing team, and has competed in the SPX category of the Nürburgring 24 hours. So just coming up on a bit of traffic there, the Porsche Cayman. Just going into the last corner of Buccini. I'll open up the taps on that 3.8 litre twin-turbo V6. The engine designed in collaboration between Nismo and Gibson. So we have about 3 minutes left on the clock, and Francesco Azzurri has pulled it into pit lane. Probably thinks, well, that's all I've got in the tank. 148.013. Try and beat that, guys. Great listening to that Nismo engine. Dallara built carbon fibre chassis on this RS01 as well. It is a thoroughbred racing machine. I think the only GT-esque race car to come out of the Renault factory in quite some time. This is the racing spirit of Le Mans run Frederic Lacour Ferrari 488 challenge. And Hugh van der Westen, currently 12th fastest, the father of the van der Westen brothers, Carl and Caesar, who we've seen out racing all season long in Trofeo GTS and Ultimate GT Sprint Cup. And of course out in the endurance equivalent as well. So yeah, a string of Porsches lining up here. The Van der Westen brothers, as we mentioned. Which one of them is? It's Carl. currently behind the wheel of the number 14 2B Autosport Porsche, but you also see there the GP racing car as well, and the Racetivity Porsche as well, looking more like a Carrera Cup race. Which, of course, they're also here at the end of this month as well, Carrera Cup France, but the 2B Autosport team, team we're very used to seeing out in these competitions, the Porsche specialist based in Chambéry. And they are known as a French Rally Championship team, and actually they've got a new partnership with the synthetic fuel supplier Zero, and you might have heard of their CEO, Paddy Loeb. And they are partnered up to develop a carbon-neutral fuel in the French Rally Championship. Hopefully one day that'll make its way onto the circuit racing scene as well, where 2B Autosport has been for the last couple of years, and using the Ultimate Cup to gain more of that circuit experience before maybe heading into Carrera Cup competition, or potentially into GT Cup Europe. They are Porsche specialists, but we do have the checkered flag out, so no one's been able to topple Francesco Azzori in this session so far. Charles-Henri Simani only 2 seconds off in the end, with Lyle Schofield third and on UCS3 pole. We just saw the JRM Racing Olivier Morahan Corvette, that is fourth fastest, with Francesco Croissant in fifth position and second of the UCS3 runners. Porsche Cup pole going to Carl van der Westen. Do remember that that car, as has silver drivers at the wheel, will have to take a hefty penalty. It is either a stop-go penalty or a 47-second time penalty that car must take in all of the races, with Caesar at the wheel as well, as is listed as a silver class driver. So the cars make their way back into pit lane. We will have the driver swap, and we'll get underway for qualifying 2, which for how many of the cars is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars will have a driver change. So Francesco Azzori in the number 3 SR&R Ferrari 488 GT3 will hand over the car to Aramis. Carl van der Westen will hand over to his brother Caesar. So we just see the drive-in Cayman of Andre Seferitos just getting its last lap across the line there and taking the class pole, in fact. In 13th position overall, beating Pierre Aru in the Herrero Racing Audi. Charles-Henri Simani in the Renault will also hand over to Emmanuel Collard. Francesco Croissant will hand over to Harrison Walker, and Lars Schofield over to Lorenzo Montiero. 5 cars that are being shared, everyone else running solo for this weekend. So it is Francesco Azzori fastest at the end of Q1, ahead of Charles-Henri Simani. Lyle Schofield claiming the UCS3 pole position ahead of his teammate Francesco Croissant. Carl van der Westen on Porsche Cup pole position in 6th overall, ahead of Frederic Lacour. Eric Debard, his nearest class rival, Patrick Michelier and Lionel Rigaud closing out the top 10, with the UCS4 pole position going to Andre Seferitos. No time set, though, by Alfredo Hernandez after bringing out the red flag very early into the session, so he'll have to start from the back of the grid for races 1 and 3. And of course, don't forget, it's not just your fastest time that matters in these qualifying sessions, it's your second fastest time, because that is what sets the grids for races 3 and 4. So we take a look at this majestic Mugello circuit. We see the driver change happening with Cesar van der Westen climbing on board the number 14 car. Actually already on board there. It was the number 13 car at the back, which is the older specification 991 machine of Porsche Cup car, which stopped competing in 2022, if I remember correctly. But conversely, contrary to what you might think, even though it's got 25 horsepower less, it's much more aerodynamic, so it's actually quicker than the 992 at the speed trap at the end of the front straight. And I've had a few drivers saying, well, if you get stuck behind that 991 car, it's actually quite hard to get around it. So that could be one to watch in the races this afternoon. Of course, I think the fastest cars in the straight line would be the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, which is going to be great for Alfredo Hernandez coming up from the back of the grid. Actually, it might be from the back of the grid in all of the races, because presumably he hasn't got the car back yet, so might not even take part in this Q2 session. So the Mexican's going to have his work cut out for him in the races this weekend, but we'll keep an eye and see if he does make his way out onto the track as we have the green flag for Q2. So second drivers aboard the cars for those that are being shared. For the majority, though, it is just the same drivers getting back out there, though. So Pierre Aru in the blue Audi there. Patrick Michelier in the Ferrari that we just saw going through picture. We see the good look at the Wile E. Coyote livery that Pierre Aru has had on his car since his very first Legends race back in 2008, I believe it was. Is the GT Sprint Cup Championship leader in UCS 4 as well. Get a listen to that 5.2 litre V10 as well that it shares with its GT3 counterpart. I see Emmanuel Collard now making his way out onto the track. Of course, an iconic name in French motorsport. Long-time driver for Pescarolo, with which he won the Le Mans Series Championship with Jean-Christophe Bouillon and Julien Jousse in 2005 and 2006. A World Endurance Championship, LMGTE AM champion as well. But class winner at the Le Mans 24 Hours as well with Porsche. Lucas Luhr and Sascha Marson as well. Of course, Sascha's still doing an awful lot of work for Porsche in developing their new young talent. Winner in LMP2 as well back in 2009. Of course, an F1 test driver for Prost, Benetton and Ligier. So very exciting to see Emmanuel out on track. 53 years old now, but not great news for Racing Spirit of Le Mans, as Frédéric Lacour has had to park the Ferrari 488 Challenge somewhere in the middle sector. That could be the bottom of the hill at Cervelli, by the looks of it. That's some sort of problem. Now, is that right rear looking a little flat? I wonder if he's sustained some sort of puncture, whether the puncture came before it was parked up, or it was a result of an off somewhere. We'll have to see. But that, of course, is not good news at all for Frédéric Lacour, with no time on the board. And assuming that car is in a position where it can rejoin the session, and we do have a red flag out now. So once again, the clock stopped at 11:22 remaining. So that is the second red flag we've had in this qualifying session. So I think we might be down to 13 runners now for the remainder of this Q2. Just looking at that right rear, it is looking a little down. And one of the marshals was taking a closer look at it, but there's Frédéric Lacour out of the car. So this, of course, will put him at the back of the grid for races 2 and 4 now. There's red lights illuminating around the Mugello circuit. You can't miss those LED panels as well. They are incredibly bright. There's one just over our shoulder in the commentary box position. I can almost feel like when it's on, it's so bright. So, yeah, not the first time we've seen the Racing Spirit of Le Mans car in a bit of strife. There were numerous issues during the races in Hockenheim for GT Sprint Cup a couple of months ago. And I'm sure they would have been hoping for much smoother running. But sadly, that right rear tyre, either of its own accord or as a result of maybe a trip through the gravel that we haven't seen. Yeah, it's had other ideas. But nonetheless, Frédéric's been a very quick driver, and sure he won't face too much difficulty in trying to rear his way back through the pack. I mean, the last time we saw Trofeo GTS in Portimao, he won 3 times in the UCS3 category, so he does know how to pull a good result out of that car. Of course, Racing Spirit of Le Mans, another team that's very busy this weekend, riding multiple Ligier JSP 320s in the European Endurance Prototype Cup on Sunday. And of course the Nova MPO2 machinery. So the car has been removed from the scene of the accident. And hopefully that means we will soon have green flags waving once again. Car's just starting to move in pit lane in anticipation of that green light. And contrary to the last red flag we had, no one managed to get a time in before the red flag was waved. But that's about to change because we have green flags waving now, and cars are about to make their way back out onto the racetrack. Just over 11 minutes remaining in this Q2 session. Who wins the race out of pit lane? It's the GP Racing Porsche of Lionel Rigaud. There's the first car back out onto the racetrack. Emmanuel Collard wasting no time in trying to find himself some track position there with rounding up the Herrero Audi. So there is Cesar van der Westen now at the wheel of the number 14 2B Autosport Porsche. The Giro that has competed in the Roscar Championship. And of course looking to build on the success that the two brothers have had so far this season. Do enjoy when the Porsches are in close proximity to one another, because we can listen to all those lovely flat sixes. Slightly bigger engine in the 992 compared to the old 991. It's the 4-litre in the newer model. In fact, we have a couple of the 991 cars out. So with 9 minutes left in the session, we wait to see who else can move forward in the running order, as they are building on to their first flying laps of this session, hopefully with no more interruptions. Emmanuel Collard setting good pace in the middle sector just on his outlap. We saw Patrick Chelier there getting very close to the gravel trap on the exit of Poggio Secco, which is turn 3. A number of the corners here taking their names from local villages, such as Borgo San Lorenzo and Scarperia. This is the Arrabbiatas that the Porsches are making their way through. We're about to head through Scarperia, in fact. There it is. Oh, lock up though for the race activity. Eric Depard Porsche right in front of Cesar van der Westen there. We can listen to another V8 in action, the Corvette, the 6.2 litre V8 in JRM Racing Z06. Just taking its way through. Luco and Poggio spin here for the GP Racing Porsche of Lionel Rigaud. That looked like it could have been Corinteo. In fact, it was. Not the first driver we've seen so far this weekend loop it there. Not sure he won't be the last. So that first lap time has come in. It's Emmanuel Collard that has set the pace of 1:47.756. That's the fastest lap time we've seen all day, or all weekend, in fact, I should say. And we're going to see a replay of what happened to Lionel Rigaud right in front of the Van der Westen 991 Porsche and the CMR Ferrari. But luckily they were both able to avoid any further dramas. And here is Emmanuel Collard now on another flying lap. He's gone purple in the first sector. And now making his way into Corintao as he's gone faster again in the middle sector. Look how rigid that chassis is in the hands of Emmanuel Collard. You can see every bump in the road, every slight twitch of the wheel in the behavior of the car. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And so Collard opens up the taps on that twin-turbo V6 engine. And let's see if he can lower the benchmark on that 1:47.756. Fastest in the first two sectors, as we mentioned. And he's taken another 0.2 of a second off of that time. 1:47.534. Safe to say that that car in the hands of Emmanuel Collard is a very formidable combination. 5 minutes left on the clock. It's Olivier Morahan, who is his nearest challenger. This is fantastic stuff to see with Collard at the wheel of that race activity run Renault RS01. Of course, the Renault Sport Trophy Series was eventually scrapped, which was going to have did have many of these cars in action. Of course, these days it's the hugely popular Clio Cup series that Renault is known for in terms of its motorsport efforts. As Collard again through that fantastic middle sequence of corners. Now back into the third sector, but this is a much cooler lap that Collard is on. Maybe either deciding he's going to be coming in at the end of this lap, or maybe just giving the tyres a cool down for pushing towards the end of the lap, or the end of the session, I should say. Just meanwhile, further down the grid, as Collard does come into pit lane, third fastest is Lorenzo Montiero on UCS 3 pole, so that would be back-to-back pole positions for the 353 SR&R run machine. And again, it's a 1-2 in that category, with Harrison Walker in the sister 333 car, fourth fastest, second in that category. Eric Debard in the Racetivity run Porsche is on Porsche Cup pole in fifth position, ahead of Cesar van der Westen, with Patrick Michelier's CMR Ferrari 488 Challenge splitting van der Westen and the remaining Porsche Cup runners of Julien Bourguignon in the number 13 car. It's another very late entry there, with Lionel Rigaud and Jeremy Avalanida. And Andrei Safiratos once again on pole position in the UCS 3 category. Smoke coming off of those front brakes there, which are the steel brakes, not the carbon ones that we alluded to earlier, that you would normally see in the standard specification of this car. This is our UCS 4 pole sitter, Andrei Safiratos in 57. The drive-in run car. Lorenzo Montiero has gone second fastest, so he's put the SR&R, well, right as I got done saying that he put the SR&R Ferrari on the front row of the grid. Olivier Morin returns the serve and goes a couple of tenths quicker than the Italian in his home race. Just 2 minutes left on the clock, and it doesn't seem like anyone's going to be able to touch Collard's time. And of course, remember, he's another driver that is going to have to take a hefty time penalty in the race that he does. I'm told they're already planning not to take part in race number 4, as really this this weekend is more about getting Charles-Henri Samani up to speed on this circuit for their planned ELMS outing later this month. So there is the 333 car just getting a little held up by the Herrero Audi. Now, we haven't seen the number 3 car, the Francesco Azzurri car, out on track in this session, interestingly. And they do have Francesco Azzurri listed for this race, rather than Aramis as it's suggested on the timing order, on the entry list. So we'll see what that's about. Car 14 went for a spin and rejoined at turn 15. So that's Cesar van der Westen in the 2B Autosport Porsche, going for a loop at Puccini in the final corner. So some of these cars are onto their final flying laps. So the clock has hit 0 and the checkered flag is out. No one has been able to touch Emmanuel Collard's benchmark time, 1:47.534, fastest time we've seen all weekend. And it will be him and Olivier Morin on the front row of the grid together. Now, unless Harrison Walker can do anything on this final lap, it will be Lorenzo Montiero ahead of the sister SR&R car, with the lead UCS 3 battle taking place on the second row of the grid. Same for the Porsche Cup battle, which occupies the third row of the grid as well, with Eric Debard leading Cesar van der Westen. You see Pierre Aru just making his way back into pit lane. So we can still hear some of the Porsches out there on the track as well. There's a really good look at that. The livery on the Herrera Racing Audi. It's a livery that he's had on all of his cars. Former Legends Cup racer. Stepping up into GT4 competition in the last couple of years. But has been beaten to pole position for this weekend's races in his class by Andre Zafiratos. So interestingly, yeah, so we definitely did not see Francesco Azzori out there in this session. So we'll see why that was the case. Was listed to have a second driver, but maybe Francesco, his car will only be in 2 of the races that we see. Of course, no Alfredo Hernandez or Frederic Lacour either. Alfredo after the Q1 red flag, and Frederic because of the Q2 red flag. But it is Emmanuel Collard fastest in Q2 ahead of Olivier Morahan. Lorenzo Monteiro on UCS3 pole position ahead of his SRNR teammate Harrison Walker, with Eric Debard beating Cesar van der Westen to the Porsche Cup pole position by just a 10th of a second. Patrick Michelier third of the UCS3 runners, and then the Porsche Cup battle continues with Julien Bourguignon, Lionel Rigaud and Avalander as well, and Andre Spiritos beating Pierre Aru to the UCS4 pole position. And so we will go racing for the first of our 4 25-minute races at 5 minutes past 6 today, local time.
Être un bon traiteur, c'est être intransigeant sur la qualité. On ne fait du bon qu'avec le meilleur. C'est être impitoyable sur les recettes. Quand c'est bon, il n'y a rien à ajouter, rien à enlever. C'est être irréprochable sur le goût. Il faut prendre du plaisir pour en donner. Voilà, pour être un bon traiteur, il faut être intraitable.
Parfaitement intraitable.